Hey, this is Daniel from Adorama. I'm here in my studio in New York City with Cadence, and we're taking some portraits today. I wanted to go over a little bit of technique though before we start. This is a question that comes up a lot, so I'm just going to kind of run through kind of subject to light and subject to background distance and how that affects the overall shot. So for this test, we'll call it, I'm going to use the same lens, the same subject obviously, the same light, which is just a Profoto 2 foot by 3 foot softbox. I have a grid on the front of it, mostly because I'm in a white studio, so to really be able to see the effect to its full extent, I wanted to make sure you could see the light a little better, so I put the grid on top to help narrow the beam. We're using a Profoto B2 for this. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna shoot a series of shots to kind of show you that the distance between the light and subject, and then also the distance between the light and the background, depending on the ratio there, will change how your background looks. So essentially, we'll start off with the light relatively close to Cadence, and Cadence relatively close to the background. And the background at this distance will probably be kind of grayish. It's a shiny white wall. It's never going to get black at this distance, but I will show you as we move away how we can get it much, much darker. So I'm going to take a couple shots like this, then we'll move the light back, but we'll leave Cadence and obviously the wall where they are, and I'll show you how that changes. So we'll start here. I've got, again, my Profoto set up. I've already figured out my exposure, so I'm just gonna, good, right? Okay, so that creates kind of a gray background. It's not gonna be white because if you look at the distance between Cadence, she's about 3 feet from the wall, and the light's about 1 foot from her. So you're looking at 4 feet from the light to the wall and only a foot from the light to Cadence. So the light is really close to her comparably. So it goes gray, even though the wall is white. Now, if I back my light up, which we've already preset a spot so we can figure out where we want to put it. Just leave a little arrow on the floor. See that? Okay. So Dave moved the light back. We're going to set the exposure again. Again, we already tested this. And we're going to take a shot like this. So we notice two things here. Number one, the wall is now practically white, right? Because the distance from the light to Cadence is 7-8 feet. And the distance from the light to the wall is only about 10 feet, 11 feet now, right? So the ratio is now changed. The other thing though is, because we moved the light further away, the light has become smaller comparison to Cadence, which now makes the light harder. So you'll definitely see that in the shadow edges, you're getting a harder light. So if I wanted that nice soft light I had in the first shot, but I wanted to have the wall white, I would need to use a bigger source. Nice. It's actually really nice. Okay, so now we've moved back a bit, right? So we've actually set this up ahead of time so that the light stays roughly the same distance to Cadence as we move to the different positions. So I'm basically the same distance from Cadence. The light is basically the same distance. The main thing that's changed now is the wall is further away. So when we make this exposure, the wall should be darker than in the first setup. Let's try that. And it is, right? We've got basically a dark gray background now, as opposed to the light gray that we started with. So I'll shoot a few like this. Good. Cool, okay. So one thing I should mention here is, because we're trying to showcase this, I've got the light really close and it's in some of my shots, but it's not crossing over where Cadence is, so I'm just gonna crop it out in post. Plus I'm shooting horizontal for the video. I would probably normally shoot these kind of things vertically. I also want to mention though at this point that you probably see in the video that there's all kinds of light in the space, right? It looks really bright in here. I've set my camera though at a f5.6 at 100 ISO at 200th of a second, and with that exposure, I'm basically getting a black shot whenever there's no flash firing. So essentially none of the ambient light that you see in the space is affecting the shot, so don't let that confuse your eye when you're looking at it. Essentially all the light in the shot is from my flash, and we can see that I have kind of a nice dark gray background. Cool, so we move the light back. Again, roughly the same distance we had in the first shot. And what we're getting here is a grayish background, almost to white. And Cadence is lit normally, of course. And again, just like before, the light is a little bit harder, right? It's not quite white on the background, but it's pretty light. Now, if I take my light and move it back even further, because I've got another 5-6 feet here, we can try that and see what that'll do. Let's move that back, let's see. So now my light is roughly 15 feet from Cadence, and she's maybe like 8 or 9 feet from the background. So, you know, we've got this really big gap. So this distance between the light and the background versus the light and Cadence, now the ratio is getting spread out. So we should get almost, if not completely, white here on the background. Let's see what we got. And yeah, it's pretty much a white background. Now, of course, if the background was not white to begin with, it wouldn't be white now. It's actually just producing as basically what it looks like to your eye. If I were to take a handheld light meter and I were to meter Cadence and then meter the background, they would probably meter roughly the same at this point. So let's shoot a few like this. Okay, so now I've moved as far back as I possibly can. I've moved the light about 1 foot away from Cadence like it was in the beginning, but now she's 20 feet away from the background. So 21 feet away from the background is the light, only 1 foot from Cadence. So what we're gonna get now, instead of a light gray background, is a very, very dark gray, almost a black background, and Cadence will be lit properly. So let's take a shot like that. Good. And yeah, we've got this kind of really stark, dark background. And again, it's just because of the movement. This is, the light itself and Cadence are the same as they were in the very first frame. Now though, if I wanted to get the background white, I don't have much more space here. I'm gonna move the light back as far as we can. We'll have Dave move it back. But I'm predicting that at this point, because the light's only gonna end up being, you know, 7 or 8 feet from Cadence and them both being 20 feet from the wall, we're not gonna be able to get a white background at this distance. Let's try. Right, so now the background is kind of a middle gray. And that's again because the distance. I can't go any further back with the softbox, so this is my best bet. So now I found in this space anyways, if I want, I can get almost black with the background or almost completely white with the background with a single light, depending on where I put my subject in the space relative to where I put the light. So remember that the distance that your light is from your subject not only affects how hard or soft the light it is, but relative to your background, it's also going to affect how the overall scene is lit. But in order to take the best advantage of this, make sure that you're setting your camera at a certain place that the room itself is dark without the flash. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe to Adorama TV, and I'll see you next time on set.